In the late 1960s and early 1970s, a mystery killer known as the Zodiac Killer would begin a murderous crime spree, spanning an unknown amount of years. The crime spree took place in San Francisco, California. The Zodiac Killer had numerous victims and killed at least 4 people to the authorities' knowledge. One man, unknown and still at large. Over 50 years later, that is, if he is still alive. Let's take a dive into the Zodiac Killer. It was Friday, December 20th, 1968, a cool night reaching low 20s in Benicia, California. The world would get a glimpse at the grim and evil Zodiac Killer. A small town with a population of 7,000 witnessed a tragic loss of 2 teenagers, whom planned to go to a Christmas concert on their first date. The 2 teenagers included David Faraday, who was a 17-year-old senior at Vallejo High School, who had plans to become a teacher, and Betty Jensen, a 16-year-old junior at Hogan High School, who hoped to receive an art scholarship. The 2 met at church and had been dating for 2 weeks. Later that night, David went to pick up Betty, where they intended to go to a Christmas concert at Betty's high school. David was driving his mom's 1961 Rambler station wagon. The couple headed to see their friend and later grabbed a bite at a diner named Mr. Ed's. Before proceeding to the Christmas concert, the 2 decided to have a change of plans, heading to Lake Herman Road. At approximately 10:15 p.m., David parked his mother's station wagon on Lake Herman Road. The 2 were there until 11 p.m. when a married couple, Homer and Peggy, saw a Rambler station wagon and claimed to see David and Betty sitting close together. Down the road, Homer and Peggy came across a red Ford truck. The 2 in the vehicle were raccoon hunters, Robert Connolly and Frank Gasser. At approximately 11:10 p.m., they noticed the vehicle still parked on Lake Herman Road. At 11:15 p.m., yet another man named James Owen, headed to work, saw the station wagon parked along with another vehicle parked next to the station wagon. Owens was questioned by the authorities days later and said he recalled hearing a gunshot in the distance after passing the 2 vehicles. Approximately 5 minutes after James Owen passed the 2 vehicles, a woman named Stella Borges passed by and stated there were no cars going in either direction. When she was near the station wagon, she saw a male who appeared to have fallen out of the door, and a girl lying on her side, facing the road, with a purple dress. Stella would go forward to report the incident to authorities. The 2 officers, Captain Daniel Pita and Officer William Warner, were at Inco gas station, a few miles away. Stella reported her findings and brought the authorities to the scene. What the officers found was shocking. This is the story of the Zodiac Killer. Captain Daniel Pita and Officer William Warner followed Stella Borges and arrived at the scene at 11:25 p.m. The 2 officers were accompanied by Officer Pierre Biru and his partner, Officer Steve Armincha. After reports of gunshot victims, upon arriving, officers appraised the scene and found David Faraday laying outside of the station wagon and that he had been shot behind the ear at close range due to a gunpowder burn on his ear. David's pulse was struggling to stay steady. An ambulance rushed him to the hospital. David's girlfriend, Betty Lou, was found 30 feet away from the vehicle, dead. An autopsy revealed she had been shot through her heart, liver, right kidney, and her lungs. She was hit by 3 bullets in total. At 12:05 a.m., Salona County Sheriff's Detective Sergeant Leslie Lundbland arrived along with the team to look for any evidence that may aid in the investigation. The officers theorized it was a random act of violence, and the mystery continued. Many witnesses came forward over the next few days. Detectives talked to William Crow, who was driving with his girlfriend when he came across a white Chevrolet Impala sedan near the scene at 9:30 p.m. James Owen, who had seen a vehicle a mere 3 feet away at 11:15 p.m. the night of the murders, would change his statement days after the murders. He said after passing the 2 vehicles, less than a minute later, he heard a gunshot, which he originally did not report to the authorities. Police interviewed Robert Connolly and Frank Gasser and asked them for them to bring in their firearms to compare to the bullets at the crime scene. The results were negative. The police found 9 shell casings at the scene, but they were only able to recover 8 bullets, and discovered they were from a Winchester Western Super X copper-coated .22 caliber long rifle. Police discovered 3 shots had penetrated the vehicle, and that the suspect was firing from a short distance. They believe Betty Lou was the first out of the passenger side and made it 30 feet away before being shot, numerous times resulting in her death. David Faraday, on the other hand, was shot immediately after exiting the vehicle. Given how the shots were fired, police determined the suspect was very experienced with firearms. The investigation continued over the next several weeks. Police began considering suspects, with their first being a young man who was interested in Betty Lou, and would get into it with David over his interest in Betty Lou. The young man who was a potential suspect was known for getting himself into trouble, including burglary and vandalism. However, he was ruled out as an officer was with the young man the night of the murders. Investigators turned their attention to the crime being drug-related, as David was in trouble with a local drug dealer. The drug dealer was involved in a drug bust earlier that night. However, this led to a dead end. 7 months passed with no solid leads in the case of Betty Lou and David Faraday. It was the 4th of July and Darlene Farron had requested the day off from Terry's Waffle House. She spent her day watching after her infant daughter. Darlene was married to Dean Farron, but little did he know she had a secret life. Weeks leading up to the 4th of July, Darlene spent a lot of time with strange characters. A young man named Mike, who was friends with Dean Farron, had a strong interest in Darlene. On July 4th, 1969, Mark and Darlene spent time together. After celebrating the 4th of July with her friends, she would meet Mike at his house at 11:45 p.m. in her 1963 Chevrolet Corvallis. They then headed to Mr. Ed's diner, the same diner Betty Lou and David Faraday went to the night of their deaths. Upon arriving, Darlene saw how busy the diner was and decided to go on a quiet road instead. At midnight, they arrived at Blue Rock Springs Park, where they watched fireworks. A car pulled up next to them and watched them before taking off. Later on, the car returned and pulled next to them again. The person exited the vehicle and pointed a bright light at Darlene and Mike. They suspected it was the police and grabbed their IDs. Mike prepared to speak but was interrupted by gunshots. The shots penetrated through Mike and hit Darlene. Darlene was barely alive. Mike was doing the best to remain alive. Mike tried to see the suspect, but unfortunately he fled. Soon after the suspect fled, 3 teenagers, Debbie, Jerry, and Roger, came across Mike and Darlene and went to get help. They headed home and called authorities to report the incident at 12:15 a.m. Officer Richard Hoffman went to the scene but was skeptical, given it was the 4th of July after all. He had been in the parking lot 20 minutes before the incident occurred, returned around to investigate the report. He attended to Mike's wounds and was joined by Detective Ed Rest. Officer Richard Hoffman accompanied Darlene, but she passed away at 12:40 a.m. On July 5, 1969, Vallejo authorities received a mystery call. 26-year-old dispatcher Nancy Stover received a call at 12:40 a.m. The person on the line said, "I want to report a murder. If you will go 1 mile east on Columbus Parkway, you will find kids in a brown car. They were shot with a 9mm Luger. I also killed those kids last year. Goodbye." This was credible lead, as the suspect reported the 9mm Luger, which was reported by authorities as the weapon used to commit the heinous crime. The police determined the number was from a gas station on Springs and Tulameen Road, which was very close to Darlene's home. Authorities began investigating a second shooting incident in less than a year. Authorities suspected it was a jealousy crime and began investigating Darlene's husband, Dean Farron. They had been married for 2 years and had 1 child together. Their relationship overlapped with Darlene's first marriage, raising suspicion among authorities. Dean, however, was at work at Caesar's restaurant and had an alibi, ruling him out as a suspect. Authorities turned their attention to Darlene's ex-husband, James Crabtree. Darlene and James married in January 1966. but would end their marriage in June 1967. James, however, had an alibi and provided his fingerprints and was cleared as a suspect. Officers ran through several potential suspects, but had no solid leads. On July 31st, 1969, 3 newspapers received a letter from someone claiming to be the suspect of the 2 crimes. The suspect sent a letter to Vallejo Times-Herald, the San Francisco Chronicle, and the San Francisco Examiner. Each letter included 1/3 of a cipher with letters, numbers, and symbols, which would lead to the identity of the suspect. The letters included the ammunition used and the clothing the victims were wearing during the crime. The suspect demanded each newspaper place the ciphers on the front page, or he would cruise around all weekend killing lone people in the night, then move on to kill again until I end up with a dozen people over the weekend. They suspect signed the letter with a circle with a crosshair through it. Of course, the newspapers were skeptical, but were unsure how to respond. The suspect signed the letters with a circle with a crosshair through it. Of course, the newspapers were skeptical, but were unsure how to respond. If they gave in, they would give a murderer a platform, but if they didn't give in, they may be blamed for murders. Only the Vallejo Times and the Chronicle placed it on the first page. The San Francisco Chronicle waited days and put it on the 4th page. Days later, on Sunday, they would go forward to publish all 3 ciphers together, along with the quote from Police Chief Jack Stilts to send more information to prove the suspect's identity. On August 7, 1969, the San Francisco Examiner received a letter from the suspect stating, "Dear Editor, this is a Zodiac speaking. In answer to your asking for more details about the good times I have had in Vallejo, I shall be very happy to supply even more material. By the way, are the police having a good time with the code? If not, tell them to cheer up. When they do crack it, they will have me." On the 4th of July, I did not open the car door. The window was rolled down, all ready. The boy was originally sitting in the front seat when I began firing. When I fired the first shot at his head, he leaped backwards at the same time, thus spoiling my aim. He ended up on the back seat, then the floor, and back, thrashing out very violently with his legs. That's how I shot him, in the knee. I did not leave the scene of the killing with squealing tires, racing engine, as described in the Vallejo newspaper. I drove away quite slowly, so as not to draw attention to my car. The man who told the police that my car was brown was a Negro, about 40 to 45, rather shabbily dressed. I was at this phone booth having some fun with the Vallejo cops when he was walking by. When I hung up the phone, up the damn thing began to ring and drew attention to me and my car. Last Christmas, in the episode, the police were wondering as to how I could shoot and hit my victims in the dark. They did not openly state this, but implied this by saying it was a well-lit night. I could see the silhouettes of the horizon. Bullshit. That area is surrounded by high hills and trees. What I did was tape a small pencil flashlight to the barrel of my gun. If you notice in the center of the beam of the light, if you aim it at the wall or ceiling, you will see a black or dark spot in the center of the circle of the light about 3 to 6 inches across. When taped to a gun barrel, the bullet will strike exactly in the center of the black dot in the light. All I had to do was spray them as if it was a water hose. There was no need to use a gun sights. I was not happy to see that I did not get front page coverage. The letter was again signed with a circle with a crosshair. The letter included many misspellings, such as Christmas with 2 S's, authorities from FBI, military codebreakers, and so forth. Began trying to break the 408 cipher. When the San Francisco Examiner published all 3 letters, a couple from Salinas, California became intrigued by the cipher and decided to try to decipher the piece. Donald Hardin was a history and economics teacher at North Salinas High School, and his wife Betty Hardin was fascinated by solving puzzles. They translated the 408 cipher as is. I like killing people because it is so much fun. It is more fun than killing wild game in the forest, because man is the most dangerous animal of all to kill. Sometimes gives me the most thrilling experience. It is even better than getting your rocks off with a girl. The best part of it is that when I did, I will be reborn in paradise, and then have killed will become my slaves. I will not give you my name because you will try to slow down or stop my collecting of slaves for my afterlife. The end of the letter had 18 characters that could not be deciphered. It was clear the Zodiac killer misspelled quite a few words, including dangerous, animal, experience, that, die, paradise, they, slow, stop, and collecting. It was believed the suspect misspelled on purpose to throw the authorities off. The last 18 characters were not ciphered, unfortunately. Thank you for watching. This is part 1. Stay tuned. Until next time.